Around 2 a.m. on our second night, a loud knock startled me awake. Assuming a team member had a medical emergency, I dressed quickly and opened the door. Instead, a young woman was being pushed into our room by handlers. She screamed at them as I slammed the door shut. Yes, welcome back to Doc Wales Diaries. It's an honor to share this journey with you once more. Today, we embark on a path that was set in motion by an unexpected stop at a small chapel in Wales, one that would change the course of my life, my wife Stella's, and our families for the next 2 decades. It began with an unlocked door, an unassuming photograph on a chapel wall, and the name I had never known, Robert Jermaine Thomas. Little did I realize that this moment would ignite a calling that would lead us across continents, from Wales to China, and even to the closed borders of North Korea. They say that the smallest spark can set a great fire. This story is proof of that. What started as a simple curiosity became then an all-consuming mission, a journey of faith and sacrifice that reshaped our lives. Let me begin with a scripture that resonates deeply in this story. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And I said, Here I am, send me. The story of Robert Jermaine Thomas was not just history, it was a challenge, a call to action. Would we step forward? Would we follow where God was leading? In this episode of Doc Wales, I honor those who ventured into the unknown, who carried the light of hope to distant shores, and whose legacies endured in the quiet corners of this world. This is a story of burdens borne, of callings answered, and of lives rebuilt across continents and generations. It was the spring of 2005. On my way back to the United States from another overseas mission, I paused in Wales to visit my mother, who is in a nursing home. My brother Phil and I had arranged to meet my dear friend Dr. Barry Bowden in Abergavenny for lunch. With time to spare, we found ourselves passing through the quiet village of Llanover. As we approached Hanover Chapel, a building I had driven by countless times in my youth, something stirred within me. Why I decided to stop that day, I don't know. But I did. The chapel stood silent, its doors unlocked. We stepped inside. The 19th century structure was immediately familiar. Wooden pews, a central pulpit, a surrounding balcony. But what caught my attention was not its architecture, but it was a photograph on the wall. A young man stared back at me, his eyes frozen in time. Alongside the picture, a carved memorial told the story of his brief life. Something about him pulled at my soul. Across the room, a map of Korea hung on the wall. On the pulpit, embroidered Asian tassels, resting as if waiting to be noticed. Who was this young man? And what was his connection to this place? As we left the chapel, my eyes drifted towards a small white cottage by the graveyard. A for sale sign hung on its gate. The building, derelict and overgrown, seemed forgotten by time. I turned to Brother Phil. "Who'd buy this dump?" He scoffed, snapping a photo. "Me!" I replied without hesitation. "One day I'd love to come back to Wales. I could do a lot with this place." That day was not yet. Returning home to the States, I shared the encounter with my wife Stella. She listened intently, her mind already working. At the time, she was an adjunct professor at Gordon College, Massachusetts, teaching writing and rhetoric. "This is a story worth writing about," I told her. "I'll do some research," she responded, and true to her word, she did. With the guidance of an Eastern Studies professor at Gordon and the invaluable insights of Dr. Sam Moffat of Princeton Seminary, Stella uncovered the extraordinary life of Robert Jermain Thomas. Within a year, she published Chosen for Choson, chronicling his mission to China and Korea, the sacrifices he and his wife Carolyn made, and his tragic execution at just 26 years of age. As Stella pieced together Thomas's story, we found ourselves at a crossroads. We were comfortable in America. I had retired from full-time medical practice, focusing instead on short-term mission work. Stella thrived in her teaching career, but something deep within us stirred, a call we couldn't ignore. The thought of returning to Wales, restoring the Thomas home, and sharing his story consumed me. Stella, ever practical, had her doubts. Yet despite our differing paths to realization, we both knew we were being led to something greater. In the fall of 2005, on my way home from a medical mission in Pakistan, I returned to Wales. My heart sank when I learned the manse had been sold. Was my obsession displaced? Had I misinterpreted the call? Meanwhile, Stella's research had opened an unexpected door. The deep ties between Wales and Korea, the revival fires that leapt from one nation to another fascinated us, and an opportunity arose to serve at Yanbian University in Tumen, China, a stone's throw from the North Korean border. The deeper I delved into Thomas's story, the stronger my longing grew. I needed to see where he had died, where he had been buried, in Pyongyang. But North Korea was a land of closed doors, shrouded in secrecy and repression. How could I get there? Then in 2007, as if by divine design, the unexpected happened. Stopping in Wales once more, I discovered that the family who had purchased the Hanover manse after attempting its restoration was now selling it. Pitt and John Evans, the owners, made the sale possible for us. That ancient well of blessing, once abandoned and forgotten, was now in our hands. It would become far more than just a house. It was an open door to a ministry we had not yet fully understood. And this was just the beginning. In March 2006, after returning to the United States, I was invited by our local church in Essex, Massachusetts, to speak about my recent mission during the devastating 2005 Pakistan earthquake. At the end of the presentation, I boldly requested prayer for a journey I hoped to undertake to North Korea. I wanted to learn more about the ministry of Robert Jermain Thomas, the young Welshman whose story I had discovered during the visit to Hanover Chapel in Wales. As I left the church, Craig Hammond, a member of the congregation, approached me. He mentioned that he was soon traveling, guess where? To North Korea with an NGO called Wheat Mission. Though he represented Cure International, another NGO, where he served as director, Wheat Mission, a humanitarian organization based in Los Angeles, was founded by Sandra Sue. Sandra had established noodle factories across North Korea and worked with orphanages. Severe starvation had struck the country from 1997 to 1998 after a failed harvest, with emaciated bodies floating down the Tumen and Yellow rivers which separate North Korea from China. Moved by compassion, Sandra tirelessly brought ingredients and noodle-making machines to the devastated regions. Over 12 years, the ministry grew, earning her deep respect from North Korean authorities, who eventually asked her to expand her efforts to include medical outreach. Craig, on behalf of Cure International, planned to bring doctors with specialized training to teach and support North Korea's medical services. Encouraged by Craig, I contacted Sandra and her physician director, Dr. David Rowe. 2 months later, I was on my way to Pyongyang, North Korea, via Yanbian, where I did visit Yanbian University and a side trip to Mongolia, which we've already discussed. My visit to Yanbian University of Science and Technology, founded in 1992 by James Kim, deepened my appreciation for the dedication of those who serve others. The university was built on an abandoned cemetery atop a hill overlooking Yanji City. Superstitious locals had avoided the site, but after the university was constructed and a new road established, it became a desirable area. Despite opposition, even the on site crematorium was transformed into a chapel for the Christian staff. Grace Kim, Dr. Kim's wife, oversaw extensive art projects on the former burial ground, adorning it with sculptures, rest areas, and a sports field. During my brief stay at UST, I lectured science and nursing students, served as a keynote speaker at the student convocation, and preached in the converted crematorium. A highlight was learning that North Korean authorities had invited Dr. Kim to build a similar university in Pyongyang. Construction had begun south of the city along the road to Kaesong, and during the development, the remnants of the Robert Jermaine Thomas Memorial Church, opened in 1932 but destroyed during the Korean War 1950 to 53, the remnants were uncovered. I hoped to glimpse the construction site during my Pyongyang visit and dreamed of one day contributing to the completed university's outreach. My wife Stella has written a biography about Dr. Kim and the universities he built in China and North Korea, entitled God's Collaborator. In North Korea, Craig arranged a follow-up meeting for Cure International staff to discuss building a medical center for children with orthopedic deformities, such as club feet, spina bifida, and limb deformities. Don Mowat, a Cure board member, and I negotiated the next phase of this project with North Korean government. After hours of bartering with these officials, they offered only 3-month visas for our staff, an unacceptable limitation. We argued that Cure needed longer-term commitments to ensure financial and organizational stability and to deliver specialized surgical equipment. The officials refused to budge, and talks reached a standstill. As I left the meeting, a young man who had supported our project and spoke flawless English, he approached me privately, tears in his eyes. I worked over 2 years to help our disabled children, he confessed. My country has let me down. In a repressive nation like North Korea, this could be treasonous statement. Recalling Corrie ten Boom's wisdom, I placed my arm on his shoulder and I said, a door is closed now, but in time a window will open and we'll work together to bring healing and hope. Could it happen? Time would tell. North Korea is a challenging, often dark place, but the doctors, nurses, and patients we met were so gracious and welcoming. Relationships formed quickly, and the promise of future medical missions inspired hope. Yet communist regimes demand total control, often by any means necessary. At the Koryo Hotel, where we stayed, the 13th floor was reserved for foreign visitors. 2 other rooms were occupied, and I noticed 3 agents slip into the room next door to ours. Our room had a 2-way mirror and was clearly bugged. Around 2 a.m. on our second night, a loud knock startled me awake. A female voice shouted, "Steve, can you come now?" Assuming a team member had a medical emergency, I dressed quickly and opened the door. Instead, a young woman was being pushed into our room by handlers. She screamed at them as I slammed the door shut, barricading it with chairs and a dresser. My roommate, Don, woke up, bewildered. "What was that about?" he asked. I explained that in totalitarian regimes, they often use honey traps and embarrassment as the tools of control. Billy Graham once recounted a similar incident during his Moscow crusade. His team always checked hotel rooms first, and on one occasion a scantily clad woman embraced an agent mistaken for Billy, just as a photographer emerged from a closet. The plot failed, and Billy leveraged it to ensure Moscow authorities allowed his preaching to be unimpeded, promising not to publicize the incident. As Genesis chapter 50 verse 20 says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good." When a second attempt occurred, Don and I reinforced the barricade. From then on, we whispered or wrote notes, staying one step ahead. Wheat Mission's leadership knew of my interest in Robert Jermaine Thomas and the destruction of the SS Sherman, the ship on which he arrived in Pyongyang. Our team, held in high regard by our government-assigned minders, was permitted a side trip to the Sherman Memorial, a carved marble rock near the Kaesong River. Just by the Kaesong River Bridge, and nearby was the captured USS Pueblo, an American spy ship seized in 1966, and it was anchored there so school children visited it daily, taught that Kim Il-sung's great-grandfather had orchestrated the attack on the Sherman, repelling Western influence and Christianity. We then travelled to Suksumdo Island, where Thomas is buried in an unmarked grave. The site where the Sherman ran aground, a sharp bend in the shallow river, still evident and being dredged to this very day. Lesser known is the fact that shortly after World War II, Syngman Rhee, South Korea's leader, and Kim Il-sung met on Suksumdo Island to discuss Korea's future. Their meeting place remains a memorial. Near it stands an ancient tree supported by wires, I believe, based on a 1928 map by the church leaders who met at Thomas's grave. This marks his resting place. Those leaders had planned a Thomas Memorial Church, a boat named Thomas, for gospel outreach and mission support. Standing there, I felt deeply moved, fulfilling my quest to learn more about my fellow Welshmen, whose homeland would soon become mine. During our weeks in Pyongyang, we performed extensive medical procedures, hip and knee replacements, spinal surgery, prostate surgery, cesarean section, cochlear implants for deafness, microsurgery, and even open heart surgery by a dedicated cardiac team from Florida. After one heart operation, the patient bled uncontrollably. With no blood transfusion service available, the surgical team, surgeon, anesthetist, and nurses knelt in the operating room and prayed. Miraculously, the bleeding stopped. Their humanity, love, and dedication left a profound impression. I'll never forget the cheers that filled our bus as the cardiac surgeon recounted the miracle that he'd witnessed, a powerful testament to faith in action. Though the Wheat Mission team, gathered from corners of the globe, parted ways that day, we left with a shared hope of reuniting the next year. The journey in China and North Korea was now far from over. So join me next time as we continue to explore these stories of compassion and courage. Until then, thank you for listening, and may God's love and peace watch over you. Doc Wales.